for really digging in and learning a little bit more about the project that is now underway. I've never been so happy to see orange cones in my entire life. This project, yes, we are going to get used to it. So this project, as many of you know, has been a very high priority for the Chamber because it's been a high priority for the business community. Many of you have been telling us for years that this is a priority for not just safety purposes, but for the efficiency of your business, for getting your people as well as access to your goods and services for a long time. And so we're really excited to learn just a little bit more about what this construction process means, as well as what the timeline is. So you're going to meet the members of the team here this morning, and so I'm going to turn it over to Cameron McGowan with HNTB to kind of kick us off and get everything started. And so with no further ado, Cameron.
Well, thank you very much for having us. As Tracy said, I'm Cameron McGowan. I'm with HNTB Corporation. We're the consultant that has been helping KDOT with delivering this project. I'm excited to be here, and I would just offer a bit of thanks to Tracy and the Chamber, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are, but there's no question that we would not be here in a position breaking ground without a lot of help from the Chamber and all the work that they've done to advocate for the project. So looking forward to that. Turn it over to Steve with KDOT.
Sure, and my name is Steve Rockers. I work for KDOT and sign small movement there, just kind of a little grammar there. But I want to thank Jason Sanders. He's working also with the part of HNTB and Laura and other HD folks. Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Lauren Reed. I'm also with HNTB. I support Cora.
I'm Laura Wagner. I'm with HNTB, and I'm the communications manager for the project.
When I talk about this project and the magnitude, I kind of cliche like it takes a village. This is part of the village we got here to kind of do it. There's a huge force at getting this project going. So anyway, thanks for having me out this morning to talk about, like I said, we're excited. I'm glad to hear people excited about orange cones, and not everybody's excited maybe as you guys are. So but you kind of help change that. I sure appreciate that. So all right, let's go. So we're here today talking about kind of the overview of the project. The scope of the project is kind of where it starts logistically, and then kind of where we come through, what past history we've already projects. I know today's kind of big day of the groundbreaking, but this project, as everybody's aware, has been around for a couple of years, not even long, depending on how kind of you handle it. And the big thing is kind of what's coming up for the next few years as we go into construction. All right. So the project, the study project, where it kind of started is on the 103rd Street, and we kind of went into a study area all the way down to 179th Street. And that study, this is kind of one of the older parks, 69, and kind of it's right to bypass. It's kind of one of the heavier congested, one of the heaviest traffic volume, the 4-lane highways we have in the state. And so the pavement's been out there for a while. And pavement's out there, some of the interchanges, and so capacity, a lot of congestion issues out there, accidents, and so that is kind of the project overview. So that's kind of one of my favorite slides. All the partners on this project, a project of this magnitude, it takes a lot of partners. And so KDOT, it is a lead. KDOT is in charge of this project. It is a KDOT project, but I couldn't do it without the help of Overland Park. As we get into it, you'll understand kind of the roles of Overland Park. Federal Highway Administration, we're using a lot of federal money on this project, and so their input and making sure that we meet all the federal requirements are on board. And last but not least, the Turnpike. The Turnpike, they are the mechanism we're using to collect the revenue. KDOT will set the prices, and it is a KDOT toll line. The Turnpike, they have the expertise to collect the revenue and kind of hand it back up to KDOT. All right. Previous studies and timelines. So on this one here, shoot here a little bit here. All right. Thank you, Cam. This teamwork right here. So the project, it started back all clear in, back in the 90s, and we did studies over here, and And it's been going on, we did the green project, some of these stuff we did, went back to the Antioch interchange of 435, and so we did a lot of major investment studies, break and access studies, and so I don't know if you can see the board there, but it shows kind of what this is all about. Just a lot of studies have been going on for this project, and so it's culminated here recently with the toll study and a pre-planning study there. All right, next slide. All right, now I'm going to hand it over to Cameron to talk about how we got today.
All right, very good. Well, Steve said, like you said, this has been around a long time. There's been a lot of work on US 69 over the really the last 2 decades, going back to the late 90s, but there are still, even with those investments and all the work that's been done through the last 20 years, there are still problems out there on the roadway, which led to this most recent set of activities. So one of the first things we do is we start to look at what's the right thing to do is you first have to define the problem. So Steve's mentioned a couple of these. You know, this is the highest volume 4-lane highway that has not been expanded in Kansas, carries over 90,000 vehicles a day. That results in a lot of recurring and persistent congestion, especially as you look at the segment north of 159th Street. And that results in unpredictable travel times. If you're driving through there at 7:15 in the morning, your travel experience is significantly different than if you're driving through there in the middle of the day or on a weekend or something like that. Also, the crash rates through this corridor are considerably higher than the statewide average. There's some kind of weird configurations that contribute to some of those higher crash rates. So on average, we see about an average of 1 crash a day out there on the roadway. So all these things together are kind of setting the stage for the need for this upcoming project. Also, as Steve mentioned, you know, this current set of activities is leading us to this construction project that's just beginning. Really started about 2 years ago in the fall of 2020. That's when we kicked off some initial looks at various options that could be implemented out there in the field, looked at a variety of different options, including the toll study, worked through a variety of approvals, which I'm going to talk a little bit about on the how we got here piece, but it's really leading us to where we are with that red line. And where we are is we have all of the planning out of the way, we have all the approvals out of the way, all the funding is in place, and we are ready and actually moving into construction. But we didn't just dive into this and say, well, let's just go out there and build express lanes. We actually did take a very deep dive into a variety of alternatives on how to address those problems that I just mentioned, including, you know, do we need to do anything to the roadway at all? Could we improve the parallel arterial streets to address those problems? Are there technology solutions that might address those problems? Really what it came down to was the only way to really fix the problem was to improve US 69 and add capacity to it in some way. And there's kind of 2 ways that you could do that. You could widen it in a traditional fashion, like what we're accustomed to, or we could take this different approach and evaluate the use of express toll lanes as the way to improve the highway and add that capacity. So the option to use express lanes is really only possible because of a fairly recent law passed in 2019 in the Kansas legislature. And that law gives KDOT the authority to develop new toll projects in the state of Kansas. Prior to 2019, this was not even an option. However, I will say that there's some restrictions with that. There's some pretty good checks and balances associated with that law. They cannot apply tolling to any existing lanes. So in the case of US 69, there's 4 lanes out there that are toll-free today. Those lanes have to remain toll-free tomorrow. It's only new capacity that can be tolled. And then there's some requirements around public output or public input, which I would argue that if you only did the bare minimum, you would not be successful with that. I'll talk a little bit about some of the public outreach that we've had. But then the other component of that, of what's in the tolling legislation, is a very rigorous approval process that requires a local level approval by the state finance, or approval by the Kansas Turnpike Board, and then ultimately by the State Finance Council. So it's had a lot of scrutiny to get to a point where this was the solution moving forward. Okay, so this concept of express toll lanes that we're implementing out there if you kind of take a look at these graphics and you start at the upper left-hand corner, that's really what the roadway looks like today. Very simplistically, there's 2 lanes in each direction that are toll-free, and there's a grass median in between the 2 bounds, the northbound and southbound directions. What this will look like after the project is completed is similar to that graphic on the lower left, where there's that additional 3rd lane in each direction built towards the median, essentially in that grass median, and fills that in. Puts a concrete safety barrier down the middle of the 2 bounds to prevent those head-to-head collisions. And then the lanes are separated, the express lanes are separated from the toll-free lanes with about a 4-foot wide buffer section just to provide that separation. And then access into and out of the express lanes is you cannot move between the lanes anytime you want. The ingress and egress, or ability to get into and out of those express lanes, is only at designated locations. And the locations that are served by the express lanes are indicated on overhead signs, as well as the current price to use the express lane to get to that destination. I guess one thing I would offer is there is a QR code shown on here. If you guys have an option, and we'll obviously provide this presentation to the group if you would like. But that QR code will take you to a very nice video that is borrowed from the Colorado Department of Transportation. It really does a good job of showing how these express lanes, how they function. Okay, so that's sort of his background. I think it is important to just take a minute and reiterate what the purpose is of the express lanes. So really there is a revenue component of tolling the express lanes, but really the purpose of the express lanes is not to generate revenue. It is using tolling as the mechanism to reduce congestion and ensure that you have good performance in the express lane at all times, even as traffic grows throughout the day or as traffic grows over time. So by applying and actively managing the performance of that lane, using tolling as that tool, it reduces the congestion across all the lanes. It has the ability to ensure that at any time you can get into that express lane and have that higher speed, reliable trip through the corridor. It does generate some revenue, but again, that is not the main goal. Is to generate a profit from the lanes. Okay, so as we evaluated express lanes, and we did take a deep dive into that, but we took an equally deeper dive into some of the other solutions as well. But what we found was, as we started to compare, I'll say widening the roadway in a traditional way versus using express lanes did emerge as the best value solution for both the city and for KDOT. From an engineering and traffic perspective, it did the best job at reducing congestion and improving that trip reliability. From an environmental perspective, it resulted in an overall more compact and smaller project footprint. We had less right-of-way impacts, less impacts to adjacent trails and parks and all those other sorts of assets that we enjoy here in the city of Overland Park. So from an environmental perspective, it had a smaller impact. And then on the financial side, while generating a profit is not the overwhelming purpose of applying tolls on the express lanes, it does generate some revenue. And what that did is it allowed an opportunity for that toll revenue to become the city's local contribution to this project. And they could contribute to the project in a way that is directly paid for by the people that are using the lanes, as opposed to impacting the city's budget or applying some other form of revenue generation that may or may not be used or may not be directly benefited by the people that are using it. So it was a new tool for funding that local contribution piece. But again, we did not these conclusions in a vacuum. I would say this project has had probably the most robust stakeholder engagement campaign of any project I've ever worked on for KDOT. Numerous public meetings, and I'm going to talk a little bit about an upcoming one that I hope you guys will have an opportunity to attend. We've worked extensively with a project advisory group of about 35 different community leaders, which Tracy was a member of that. Lots of engagement with the city council, the mayor's office, and city staff to work through these. And then a lot of surveys and focus groups and really just outreach to make sure that there was broad understanding of what was being proposed here and put elected leaders in a position to determine whether they felt this was the best option for improving US 69. And we got through a lot of that work, I'll say, in the early part of 2021, and in the summer of 21, we worked our way through that approval process. So as I mentioned, the tolling legislation does require this sort of three-step approval process, starting first at the local level, presented these ideas to the city council. They passed a resolution saying, yes, KDOT, we want that solution to be brought to US 69. Then moved to the Kansas Turnpike Board, where they unanimously approved the project, and then it was sent to the State Finance Council, which, for those of you that are not familiar with that body, that is a body made up of the governor, lieutenant governor, president of the Senate, speaker of the House, majority and minority leaders in both chambers. So essentially the bulk of legislative leadership at the state level, and it was presented to them and approved by them. So with all those things out of the way, then it could move forward through the procurement of a contractor, which Steve's going to talk about here in just a second, and ultimately into construction, where we find ourselves today.
All right, thank you, Cameron. So, last fall, the proposals were submitted, and it was this is a design build project, so it was a value proposal. So we went through procurement about a year ago this time. Like I said, last fall they turned in proposals, and the winning team was a joint venture of Ames Construction Company and Emery-Staff, and a design build project. To also help out with the design. And the designers in this project is Parsons Transportation Group and GBA. It was very, during the procurement, two really good teams, Clarkson Construction Company and IDECR partnered with HDR, and the proposals were very, very close, and it was a close, kind of a spot check and finish line. And so very good teams, and like I said, Ames Construction. And so since last fall, we've been doing a lot of design, and we have a project office here in Overland Park, 129th, and so that's the design build team. So now, what are we going to do with this project? Like I mentioned, we started at 103rd Street, and we're reconstructing all pavement down to 151st Street. So the existing two lanes on both directions are going to be constructed northbound and southbound, and we're adding on the toll lane in the median. And then there's a little gap in the project, and adding on completing the interchange at 157th Street. Right now, the ramps are just on the north side. We're going to complete the ramps on the south side and make it complete. And then, and Justin, we're also going through, we had another public involvement campaign, all the 11 noise walls, all the walls that we there's a process where you had to make the criteria to make sure the walls can be put in the project. And then before we put noise walls in, we make sure the neighborhoods want the walls. And so we went through kind of mail out ballots and actually made sure the folks in the neighborhoods wanted the walls. And so after all the process, make sure criteria, all the walls that were met the criteria, we add the project. It will, so when this kind of project is done, if you kind of drive along 435, it'll look a lot like that too. And so all those trees that were cutting down will be replaced with noise walls. So here's kind of one of the things that we kind of move forward, and we have a lot more detail with the teams on the construction schedule. And so here's what we plan. Construction's going to start here. If we drive through it today, you can see stuff's happened already, but a lot of it's kind of preliminary nature. Here in March, it's going to get a lot more ramped up, and if you're further along, even more. And so construction of Widening 69, relocation, replacement of several of the bridges, widening the 135th Street. One of the things that's kind of important for us to get is that there's as much traffic on 135th Street as draws on US 69. It's kind of where our main road drives it. There's a lot of traffic on 135th Street. That's one of the areas where we're really trying to make sure we minimize impacts. And then adding turn lanes on and ramps on 135th Street. So there will be some impacts on 135th Street, and that is scheduled to happen this year. Next year. Just a little further out there. So we're going to do some At 119th Street interchange will be constructed. The 139th Street, is that what it says? 139th Street, we're going to do 2 phases. Then 143rd Street, some bridge widening will take place in the next year. So now some cool stuff. Renderings. So the first one we see here is at 135th Street. And not too much is going to change here at 135th Street. And obviously, you can see there's a widening. The bridges are getting wider. There's a toll lane there. But for the most part, this interchange shouldn't be, other than the fact it'll be new and concrete and everything shouldn't be significantly changed. Next one. This is probably one of the more significant changes to the project will be at the Blue Valley interchange. New flyover to accommodate some of that current ingress and will be fixed, and the toll lane bridge kind of there. And so this is kind of and then you can see over there at the bottom right hand corner how that toll lanes are going to work. And 167th Street, like I mentioned, there's going to be a little gap in the project, and then this will be what we call, in the world of, has different terms, but there are 2 roundabouts at the bottom. Some call this what we call a dumbbell type of interchange, and so it'll have, and it matches. City Park has a lot of roundabouts all along 107th Street, so this is kind of matching their current kind of design at Metcalf and Antioch. And then back up on the north side at 435, this is another kind of, we have some more lighting, and if you go north is up to the top there, and you can kind of see, this will tie in at 103rd Street's a little bit off, and so this is where it shows kind of tying the existing 6 lanes at 103rd Street. And so as we kind of move into the construction phase, we kind of want to make sure that folks are aware of all the different communications. There's social media, newsletters, presentations, and we want to make sure folks, before they leave the house in the morning, they understand kind of what the traffic's going to be when they get out there. So we have a lot of media engagement and social networks, and just kind of make sure that people are aware of what's going on there, because there will be, some days, some of the traffic will be longer term, some will be short term, and we want to, people can sign up for all this stuff to get aware of it. And then as we get further closer to actually the completion of the project, these toll lanes are in action. We want people to understand how these toll lanes are going to work. And you'll have to, in order to take advantage of the discount, you'll have to get a K-tag. And kind of, this is a new thing that we're putting into Oval Park. And so there's, I think some of the questions, even though we live at that, we've had, are there going to be toll booths out there? No toll booths. It's all going to be electronic. And so you can kind of drive right on by, no slowing down, and so we're going to have to educate, and then just kind of how they work and how you can tie up and do a lot of education to get everybody clear on how they're going to work.
Steve, before we leave this slide, I want to put in just a plug for the text messaging that you have. I signed up for this, and it's awesome. So at least once a day, you get a text message that talks about what you can expect to come up the next day. And so I think that's the easiest, because it comes to you. You don't have to reach out and go check anything on Twitter or Facebook or anything. So I really recommend that you do that.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, when the contractor comes with us for something they're going to do, we try to keep those fairly snappy. I think you're getting them fairly frequently, the text message. And so every day is something different going on there. And so I think that is kind of a thing to kind of study with.
Yeah, and you can sign up, like if you only care about the interchange that's closest to your house, you can just sign up for that. I signed up for everything along the route, because most of the time you're going to travel the whole route, and so you care about something at 119th, you probably also care about 135th Street. So you can just go to the website and do that. All right.
For that, you talked about done studies of this traffic count. Governor Kelly said that the traffic is going to quadruple by the year 2050 or possibly quicker than that.
So
are these studies available to us?
yes, they are. All those traffic studies are out on the project website, function towards that. I think that the travel times are expected to quadruple if nothing is done out there. The traffic volumes themselves are not quadrupling. They are growing. They're expected to grow to around 130 to 140,000 vehicles per day, somewhere in that range. But when you're already over capacity of the 4-lane and you're adding that sort of volume, that's where you start to see your travel time today that might take, 10 to 12 minutes through the corridor starts to grow to be in 30 to 40 minutes. I think we're back here.
So Cameron's going to about some of the things we're doing to address equity on the project.
Yeah, this is kind of the last topic that we wanted to cover, and then we'll obviously open it up for questions and discussion. One of the things that was very frequently brought up by members of the community, by elected officials, by, frankly, our environmental reviewers of the federal highways is the application of express toll lanes and putting that pricing on the managed lane. Does that create an equity concern, particularly for low-income residents and community members and users of the highway? So coming out of that environmental review, KDOT did commit to creating a project-specific equity committee, and that committee was formed early last year and has worked through the course of 2022 and up to now, kind of trying to dive into that topic in a little more detail. So as we got into that, what we really had to start with was trying to define what is the equity issue that we're trying to address specifically with this project. I mean, the equity is a complex challenge that spans a lot of different topics well beyond transportation. But we tried to boil that down to what does it actually mean for this project. And really what it came down to is we worked through that definition process with the committee. It really came down to two elements. Is the access for the benefits that can be provided by the express lanes, is that fair and equitable? And then the second component is there a pricing or a financial burden associated with that? So that's what we tried to dive into in more detail. So we could spend a whole other hour talking about the work of that committee that's gone on over the last year, but I'll just to summarize that, I would say the recommendations that are coming out of that committee really fit into three buckets or three strategies that are being recommended to KDOT to implement. One is a series of actions related to transit. As you guys are aware, our transit usage in Johnson County isn't maybe as robust as in other places, but there is an express bus route that runs along US 69 that runs through several stops in the south and runs to downtown a few different times per day. We want to look at ways to improve that transit access, if there's modifications to the route, if there's frequency changes that can be made to those routes, as well as not just focus on fixed route bus service, but also expand that out into other transit solutions that are maybe more appropriate for this community, whether that's microtransit or things like paratransit that are taking people to and from medical appointments and things of that nature. So the intent is to try and provide that similar mobility benefit for those transit users that want to use that, and to do so in a way where there is no additional cost to the individual transit user. So that's kind of one set of recommendations. The next set is focused on toll discounts. So this is, providing some relief from the financial burden for those that qualify. I would say right now where the recommendations are headed is for those that qualify for certain state aid programs, that's SNAP or WIC. If you're already qualified for those, then you can get a K-tag and get that set to where it always charges only the minimum toll, not the dynamic rate that is displayed out there, as a way for those individuals to access the benefits of the express lane at the lowest possible cost. And then the last piece has to do with toll access and communication directly to equity priority communities. There's language barriers. There's a lot of times the traditional outreach channels that we use may not reach some of those communities, so we're going to enhance the direct communication to those communities, as well as try and connect them with some existing programs such as Bank Pass, which is
a program that's common in the toll industry, but it's focused on folks that do not have bank accounts and credit cards as a way for them to get the lowest toll rates, but still have a cash-based financial system. So those are kind of the direction that it's going right now. Where this stands is it's in, those recommendations have been sent to KDOT's leadership. It's under their review. Assuming that they are supportive of those ideas, we'll be working over the course of the next 3 years prior to the opening to stand up some of these programs. And then lastly, I would just say, we're not taking input on this and certainly continue ideas from all of you. We have a new survey out there which you can access by taking that by scanning that QR code. We're obviously more than happy to come and give presentations to your individual organizations that you all represent. And then our website is a great place both to find information about the project, but also a way to reach out to us and leave comments. And we do respond to those as quickly as we can. So we certainly invite you to do that. And then the last, we have a public meeting coming up next Tuesday, actually. This will be a public meeting focused on getting ready for construction and communicating some information about impacts that we'll see over the course of this upcoming year in particular. That's going to be at the Hilltop Conference Center next Tuesday in the evening from 5 to 7. Members of our team will be there, KDOT obviously there, as well as members of the contractor team there to be on hand to answer questions.
And as part of the public meeting, it's also going to be a virtual component too.
That's right.
That's right. Going to work.
So anybody that can attend from 5 to 7 on Tuesday, we are for 30 days following the meeting going to have a feedback form. It's kind of a story map for it. So you can go through and see everything that we're going to be having on display there. So you can look at it and see the narrative that goes with it, since there won't be a person there like there will be a public meeting. And then you can go through and see the entire thing, and there'll be a place for comments at the end. So if you have any questions, you can reach back out to us. So that'll be up for 30 days following.
That was kind of something that, I don't know, during COVID, we did a lot of those meetings that way. We couldn't obviously meet in person to that now. And it was kind of those things that we learned, obviously the demographics for different parts of the state. But here in a little park, I mean, when we had that one slide that showed we reached out to 1.4 million people, and we didn't have 1.4 million people show up to our meeting. A lot of it was virtual type of like stuff. And so that was kind of, in 30 days, a lot of people appreciate it. And of course, if you come to a meeting and you have a question and like, oh, I sure would ask it. So you kind of use that whole website thing for kind of way to get your questions answered. So that's our presentation. We open it up. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, any rumors, it's amazing sometimes what rumors I hear out there. If you hear something that if you hear something that doesn't sound right, let me know. You may be right, but we're here to kind of try and keep everybody on the straight and narrow. So